Getting into the lockdown is one thing, getting out of it is another. How do we return to the venues that are the heartbeat of our culture? How do we ever get back to seeing bands in the small venues that are core to everything we believe in? I spoke to Mark Davyd from the Music Venue Trust, who was keen to refute recent rumours that there may be no gigs till 2021. The vision he's got is that we could be back in venues later this summer or early autumn, but there are many caveats and a whole new way of going to see gigs and a whole new way thinking just to make this most treasured of experiences happen.
And the British government is not going to take the position right now that live music cannot open until autumn 2021. Why? Because that would cost around about £2.5 billion. Just that's the amount of money they would need, or there would be no live music when they came back to it. It costs £2.5 billion quid. Will they end up spending £2.5 billion quid if it takes until autumn 2021? Yeah, that's quite likely. But they can't. They're not going to walk into a room now and say, okay, everything's cancelled until autumn 2021, and here's the £2.5 billion fund to pay for that. What they're going to do is say, okay, we still can't really let you open, so here's another range of measures. The most likely one that they're going to take any action on, if they do something else, is going to be rent, because rent is a huge, huge problem for any physical space now. I mean, I don't know, maybe do you own your flat or do you rent yours?
Luckily, we bought it when in the days when nobody wanted to live around here.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, this is not just about commercial rents. In the private sector, private renters, in London, I think you've got 4.5 million people living in rented accommodation. About, as far as we know, roughly half of them can no longer access it because they're students and they've gone back to their parents. They're foreign people who've gone back home to the EU country. So you've got all these landlords asking for all these rents for buildings that are unoccupied, and you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. And then on the venue side of things, the government's position is that landlords will unilaterally decide that, we're going to give you a rent freeze, we're going to give you a rent holiday. Okay, well, there's two problems with that. One is, I don't actually think that's a cultural policy at all. A commercial landlord is going to decide whether a venue gets to reopen or not. How does that commercial landlord know how valuable the venue is? Do you know what I mean? Literally, how they got any idea of what the value of that is? They know what it's worth in pounds pence, but
I understand the economics of this. And yes, it's going to be very expensive, but what about the health factors? I mean, how could people make these things work till there's a vaccine or till there's a proper track and test? Because the testing doesn't really work that well yet, does it?
No, the testing's a bit of a red herring at the moment, to be honest. The issue is the infection rate. They need to bring the infection rate down to, but I know this is how boring I've got. Infection rate's got to go to less than 1.05.
Yeah.
Once it goes below 1.05, it is then acceptable, the level of infection that will be got, and how severe it will be and how much treatment you can give to everybody. And that's the big issue at the moment, is that we have a big peak coming at us, and we don't have enough ventilators or beds or protective equipment to deal with that big peak. The truth is that coronavirus itself differs from flu solely in the infection rates. It doesn't really differ that much in terms of the mortality rate if you take out the issue of lack of health facilities. That's what people have got confused on. People are thinking it's a real killer disease. No, it's a real killer disease if you don't have the health facilities. And we know that because where has got the lowest rate of deaths is Germany. Who's got the best health facilities? Germany. Everybody's getting a ventilator, everybody's getting early treatment, everybody's getting oxygen really, really early. We're not able to do that because we don't
typical
have
those organised, cynical organised Germans, eh?
Yeah, I did have fun the other day on the internet. I was just saying, does anyone remember those Brexit people who were running around saying they were going to vote for Brexit because they didn't want to be run by the Germans? That looks like a terrible decision now, doesn't it? I mean,
we got Dominic Cummings.
Well, exactly, but I mean, they've had 110,000 infections. They've got only 2,000 deaths.
I know.
We've got 93,000. We've got 13,000 deaths, and that's just the ones that we're admitting. everybody's saying we've probably got another 5 to 7,000 deaths. We're probably at 20,000.
Yeah.
So a quarter of our known infections are dying. But why is that? Because we're not able to take enough of them in to the facilities and everything else quickly enough. And strangely enough, that brings me on to exactly what we're trying to do with the venues, believe it or not. Our approach to trying to save all these venues is exactly the same as that. It's that we as an organisation cannot save all 700 of them that are now part of our membership at once. It can't be done. I mean, if everybody came to us and said, could we have the money that we need right now for the problem we've got right now? Well, we actually know how much that would be. In total, they need £48 million to get until the middle of May, yeah, of which the government stuff is worth about 33 million. So they're short 15 million quid. Who's got 15 million quid to give to grassroots music venues? So you can't do that. So what we're doing instead is we're doing the same thing as hospitals are forced to do, which is we've got loads of, we've appointed Jay Taylor in Manchester. We've got coordinators all the way around the country dealing directly with a group of venues. And they're trying to get them all the advice they can and everything else. And only at the point where they're really, really in danger of closing down, so they come through the system to us, where we then deal with the fact they're in crisis and they might close down.
So you deal with the crisis venues then, yeah. Some can look after themselves just about, but some are real, and the ones in real trouble, you can come in and somehow hold them up till we get the bump.
Well, and also we've got a team to do that. So actually we can probably deal with 5 to 7 of those a day. You know what I mean? And we wouldn't get any backlog. We'd have 5 cases going back out again, and we've written to the landlord, or we've spoken to their local authority, or we've spoken to the licensing, or we've spoken to whatever it is we need to do. We can deal with each one like that. But if we start trying to deal with 10 a day, we're going to get 3 that didn't get dealt with yesterday, and the next day you got 13, and the day after that you got 16, and then, you know what I mean? And it just goes on and on escalating until you have a caseload where you can't possibly do it, and the venue closes before you can get anything done.
You're like a venue hospital in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah,
we are. That's exactly what we're doing, mate. It's basically we've set up a crisis unit in the middle of this catastrophe, and the numbers are bad. There are 114 venues that are safe. The rest, 586 of them, as it now stands, are basically at some risk of closing down within the next 8 weeks.
There's quite a lot of sort of DIY little schemes going on. I know it's not a perfect solution, but I saw the Ferret in Preston was selling tickets for gigs that might happen or might not happen. They were doing some fundraisers. I mean, these aren't ideal, but they're just ways of maybe staving things off for a couple of weeks, aren't they?
Well, we've got the central crisis bit, which we've already announced, and then the next thing we're announcing is based on some work that's been done by artists. We're launching a campaign, #SaveOurVenues, and we're going to have a website for that, and basically it will be full of the tools that artists and local communities can take to directly save their own favourite grassroots music venue. And then again, what we're going to do is throttle people going on, like try and control the venues going onto that site that need help, so they're getting help at the exact moment they know it. So instead of launching, 550 fundraising campaigns, let's launch 50 for the 50 venues that are at the most risk. Have 50 artists that do an event online that puts some money into them. Have 50 T-shirts people can buy. 50, you know what I mean? Let's deal with that. And then at each one of them that goes out of crisis, we then bring another one in and say, okay, this is the next one in the line. And again, if you just do it that way, I mean, the thing that nobody knows, literally nobody knows, is how the government is going to deal with coming out of the lockdown. Okay, what we have seen is the Germans and the French have already announced that they are reopening schools and universities and preschools. And the French is now, they're starting from the 11th of May. And the Germans are talking about starting at the beginning of May, although that feels unlikely to us. And then beyond that, they're then talking about opening sections of the economy. Now, there are 2 different theories on this. The one that we think is the most likely, and we've gone to lots of government meetings, we've listened to lots of government advice. The one we think is likely is that they will come out of this the same way they went in, and they will start by saying gatherings of less than 50 or 100, in situations where social distancing can be practiced, will be permitted. And then if that doesn't cause any more spikes, probably a couple of weeks after that, they'll raise that limit and maybe remove some of the social distancing measures of the smaller ones. So you'll see it roll out. The social distancing will start here and it will gradually taper down, and the size of things will start here and it will gradually taper up. That's one theory. That would mean that grassroots music venues open relatively soon, but probably under circumstances where there are a limited number of people allowed in, and that will mean they'll have to do live streaming and broadcast in order to make it worthwhile for the artists.
The nature of gigs will change after this, won't they? It'll change anyway, won't it? It will be live streaming mixed with being live, which in a way is a good thing.
I think
when it becomes international.
Yeah, well, let's imagine a gig. Let's imagine a gig at the band. Let's imagine a gig at Night and Day. Let's say the government says that as a pub it can open already, which seems quite likely. They might do that in maybe a couple of months. Early June, middle of June, maybe July. August currently feels like, if this is the thing they're going to do, August feels like it probably is ending towards the back end of that rather than the front end. Because if you think about it, the tapering could take 2 or 3 months. So actually, like I think midpoint of this thing is probably the 1st of July. Early would be anything in June. Late would be anything in August. That's the kind of window that they would start this stuff. Then, if you imagine a gig at Night and Day, maybe it can only open with 50 capacity. But if it could do live streaming, there could be 50 tickets to get in, to create the crowd atmosphere, to have the band playing so they could give a full live performance. The musicians will be able to go there, which is, what's different about the live streaming at the moment. But then after that, maybe you could have, as you said, you could have an international audience, and frankly, if that happens, we would like to see a lot of big featured artists who can't play festivals now going, okay, the limit of what I can do is a 50-person gig. So, let's have Elbow playing at the Night and Day for 50 people who can go there and 5,000 people who can watch it online. And a ticket to get in is 20 quid or 15 quid. And a ticket to watch it online is a £5, but that actually makes the gig viable. And it makes it viable for everybody involved, and
online you could have add-ons. You could have interviews with the band, exclusive backstage content, sound check, stuff to make the ticket worth it. If you've got an international band playing there, see, in a weird way, this is a silver lining, because someone like the Night and Day is fantastic because it's a hub of a local scene. But if you're in Hong Kong or if you're in Fiji, you could tune in and watch bands play the Night and Day, and it becomes an international brand. So in a way, it's working in the opposite direction. It's not like the end. It could be a new beginning, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And then I think that also plays in the way you would taper it, because, probably what bands would want to do is still control the total number of tickets, maybe, because what you don't want to do is exhaust the audience. So maybe it's 5,000 online tickets, 50 direct to the audience. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. And then as the numbers change, so when the government says, okay, well, it could be 100 people in a room, and that's an acceptable risk now, and that's 100 people. Maybe the top line goes down to 4,500, and then gradually it will come back to where bands are able to play the larger stadiums they want to play. And you know what? The truth about that article is, it is imaginable that an 18,000-seater stadium may not be a viable risk until there's a full vaccine, and people are talking about it taking 18 months to get a vaccine. The other model, though, that we should cover, mate, is it is being put around that there's some studies saying that the larger the gathering outdoors, the less the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So actually,
bump into the spreader, or
I think it's just to do with the way that they can imagine the people going to a park wearing masks. So there isn't a lot of airborne stuff. It would all be down to contact, and you would be able to control the level of contact there was. So if everybody had to use only their own single-use plastic cup, they can't be changed from one to the other. Everybody handing, there's ways that you can control that. The challenge with that is that we aren't really sure how that would happen, given that the festival season is basically cancelled. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth of that. The lead-in time to get a festival up and running is 2 to 3 months. Well, let's say they went with that as a plan, and they did it as, let's say they did it as early as the 1st of June. Well, maths tells you that the first date that anything could take place would be the 1st of September. So in terms of a plan for getting things reopened and getting bands playing, well, who wants to be playing in a park in the middle of September in England?
I think
you know what I mean?
It's going to care now. It's just
so I know fans just want to play. I get that, but you know what I mean. It's one of those where you
still
go.
festivals
Okay,
on. There's still festivals on in August. I haven't cancelled yet.
yeah, I think that's personally. You have to be very careful because everything is changing and developing all the time. You know, and that's one of the things we've certainly learned from. We're in contact with all the European music associations. Hi, John. We're in contact with all the European music
Where's my
associations.
tea?
I would share peppermint tea with you if I could.
Yeah. No, well, next Tuesday, 11 o'clock. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good one.
All right then.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you know what I mean? It's one of those where you go, okay, you know, people are doing different things in different places where everybody's tracking how they're working.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the danger of any of these sort of examinations of it is, let's be honest, definitely make sure you put this in anything you run. Yeah. Nobody really knows. And newspapers and media want to be really, really careful about speculating, because there are massive negative outcomes from bad speculation. So following that article widely going around yesterday, I had to then deal with, I think, 10 or 20 venues dealt with by us regional coordinators who basically at that point were ready to close. Because they know they have huge debts, and our argument to them is, look, sit this out, let us work with you, let's see what we can do. But then they read in the newspaper, well, it's going to last till August 2021. They know they can't make it till then. And there's no way they can do it with what's on offer now. So they were ready to literally go to the landlord and give the keys back. We had to talk a load of people off the ledge, you know. So I would really strongly encourage everybody in the music industry to be very practical in these circumstances. Like, okay, what are we dealing with today? And what does that tell us about what we're maybe dealing with in a week, 2 weeks? And then always be talking about, beyond that, what are the models? What are the models of what might be happening? And never ever focus on one model because it's, you know, a particularly bad or even a particularly good story. If somebody had written an article saying, oh, I think all music venues are going to be open on the 1st of May, I would have gone in just as hard, saying, just that, could you please not say that? Because that's going to be the other way around. People won't do the things they need to do because they think it's all going to be over soon. You know?
So, okay, so in a theoretical sense, and we talk about theoretical, maybe a slow reopening after the lockdown, but we don't know for sure. So what factors are at play here? Is it the 1.05% infection rate? Do we have to get to that point first before we can let 50 people, in let's say the 100 Club, you know, or for a venue?
Yeah, the answer is that we want to take real medical advice on it, but we're being very clear with government. The music venues are not prepared to be testing grounds to see what works. Yeah, and music venues don't want to open to be told later on that, well, we don't think that we should go to them or whatever else. We want very, very clear medical advice. People based on the rate of infection that we have, we think we can open up a certain section of society and people can do things in this way. You know, as I said to you, the truth is at the moment, we already have absolute hives of infection, and they're called supermarkets.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know, there are more than 50 people in your supermarket when you go there right now. So actually, you know, I know what people are trying to do on social distancing. I mean, I was talking with Frank Turner this morning. We did a coffee with Frank Turner, and basically Frank was saying, you know, where he's got a park where he is. He went out for his run on Saturday. It was rammed.
No, don't go in the parks. They're the worst places.
He said it was absolutely rammed. You know, what can you do about that? So I think there is a thing. One other thing that I really don't think has been touched on, though, in all the other stuff that's been discussed, is there is a clear need at the moment to concentrate on the issue of the virus, because we've got a live virus with high infection rates, with high mortality rates, because we don't have the facilities to treat it, and it's all happening at once. All those things we discussed. Okay, but when you lock people in their houses, other things start happening. So, and the ability to deal with this virus in isolation from everything else, that's not a permanent state of affairs. You know, I've seen people saying, well, I won't go to anything at all until a vaccine exists. And I'm like, okay, let's imagine that takes 2 years. I'm going to tell you, you stay locked in your house for 2 years, your mental health problems are going to be completely out of control.
And physical as well, physical and mental, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so there is a lot of discussion in medical circles about, okay, of course, right now, people are dying. You know what I mean? You've got to deal with this. But you're going to get...
But going back, I mean, that's all true, and it's those are important points. But just going back to the venue thing, as we come out, what would be a scenario, a theoretical scenario of going to a gig, theoretically maybe in August at a club somewhere? What would we have to wear? Would people be recommending face masks? Would people allowed to get drunk in there and get a little chaotic? Would people have to observe social distancing? Will it be temperature tests, or would it be like China, South Korea? We have an app in your phone saying who's been, who's got antibodies, etc. These kind of sci-fi measures, which could become reality. How many of those do you sort of foresee becoming a reality?
I think partly it's going to be led by the public. Partly it's going to be led by the public. I think when we first go back out, you're going to see a lot of people still wearing masks. And let's be honest, that's not that. I mean, you and me have been around the world a bit. It's not that uncommon to be in countries where the wearing of masks in social situations.
That's ironic in France, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that uncommon. And I mean, also, let's be honest, both of us are old enough to remember when wearing a face mask at a rave was actually a fucking fashion item. So, I'd say fashionable face masks we're probably likely to see because the audience will want to wear them.
Yeah.
Venues will definitely want to be implementing highly secure cleansing measures. They'll want to control the use of plastics and how they pass from one person to another. It's quite likely you'll see staff wearing plastic gloves or protective materials and everything, trying to make sure that their thing. And I think it's unlikely that there will be a day within the next month in which the government will turn around and say, okay, everything's open tomorrow. And frankly, if they did, no venue would be able to do that. I think we would see in this model, we're going to see it very gradually opening. We will try and keep a certain amount of social distancing measures going if that was what was happening. And the main thing is we will follow the medical advice. If the medical advice is based on these infection rates, particularly in certain sections of society, you know what I mean? That's another issue that's really uncomfortable and difficult to talk about. But the truth is, you and me are more at risk if we go to a music gig than somebody in their 20s.
Than half the bands we go and see.
yeah, exactly. So, maybe only young. Well, there's a good one. Here's a positive. Maybe all festivals and all of the gigs that are going on have to be headlined by people under the age of 30.
I'll be cool
for 18 years. That would be. I mean, that sounds brilliant to me. That's exactly what we want, mate. So.
Well, that's an interesting angle. There will be a massive cultural shift after this, and that'll be part of it. But just going back to the idea of medical advice, because the medical advice I've been getting off certain people, I don't really want to mention this, who do know what they're talking about. They're saying they're not really very enthusiastic about having crowds of people in very small spaces until there's a vaccine, not even track and test. They're waiting for a vaccine before they say we should be allowed to go into like venue type spaces. I mean, what would you say to those people I know you're not a medical person, but you read a lot and you're talking from the aspect of venues and a culture we both love. So is there a meeting point between the two here? How can these work together?
I think the meeting point is that the point where those people are comfortable that 100 people can be in a supermarket, I think there is an argument to be made that 50 people can be in a 300 capacity venue. Mm-hmm. That the amount of space that's available, you get a packed out venue, of course you're right up against people and the behavior is obviously contact, but you get 50 people in a 300 capacity venue, and we're doing the stuff that we're talking about streaming it online so it makes sense for the artists and makes sense for the venue. You do something like that, we're getting sectors of the music industry back up and running. That's real. I mean, I can't underestimate this. We're dealing with a very specific problem with the venues at our angle, but I mean, of course, we're in touch with all our industry friends. What's hitting the crews, what's hitting the artists is appalling. And you're going to know hundreds of people in that situation. That the income's just stopped.
Yeah,
it's just stopped. And I think the concept that permanently ending somebody's income to a date in the future at which there is not a vaccine, that goes back into, okay, But I don't think we can carry on forever dealing with the virus in isolation. There's going to be a point at which we have to say the damage that's being done to people's health by poverty, the damage that's being done to their mental health by being locked inside all the time, all these things are going to start to be factors. And it's really not a black and white area. It's an incredibly grey area. And to be honest, I'm quite pleased I don't have to make those decisions. I just have to respond to them. You know,
so you would say, yeah, as like a venue would have like circles you could stand in. Do you think about that? You know, like you see queues outside shops with tape on the floors. You know,
I think you'd see audiences doing it themselves to a certain extent. You know, I mean, you're going to see audiences behave in a slight. I think you're going to see audiences. Do you know what? Even if they reopened them all tomorrow, does anybody think that audiences would behave exactly the same tomorrow as they did in December last year? I don't think they will.
Well, they're already saying, a lot of people, the UK, no matter what the news says about everyone being in the parks and being too busy, they're saying the problem is that 90% of the British public haven't left the houses for 3 weeks, and we're being we're too isolated, and afterwards people may find it difficult to go out again.
Yeah, I think all these things are true, and I think you're obviously looking at a really very dramatic situation that there's very few people alive who have ever experienced before, going all the way back to 1918, you know, and this is a very serious situation. But I think what's really important is to be incredibly level-headed about it and deal with each piece of information when it's to be dealt with, and have just keep all the avenues open. You know, anybody who's in the medical profession is welcome to come to us with suggestions of like, okay, this is another thing you could be doing.
I'll put you in touch.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd also say, honestly, these venues are so well connected within their local communities. They are actually places that could be used to get information out. I mean, lots of them have already set up things supporting their communities. We've got people doing food runs, got people getting information out of things. I mean, that's a role that these are community spaces as much as they're busy venues. But ultimately, I think for the sake of, frankly, millions of people who enjoy the experience of live music, and millions of people who work, hundreds of thousands of musicians who work in it, we are going to have to find a way to bring this back that's balanced against the health risks that we have. I think anybody who takes an absolutist position in this is on a high nothing. If we're only going to deal with the virus, I said something the other day, I can deal with all viruses and all infections permanently for all time. Nobody ever go out or meet anybody ever again, and none of us will ever die from a virus or an infection, because that's how they're passed from person to person. Okay? But I don't think anybody believes in that 100%. So somewhere between let's all go and lick each other and let's never meet each other ever again, there's a gradient of that, which is basically where are we now in terms of the infections of the virus, in terms of people's safety, in terms of the other negative impacts that we're starting to see. Where do we go to get from one thing to the other?
Mm-hmm. That's great, Mark. That's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Tea's brewing up, John.
Yeah, yes. It's always nice to have a cup of tea.
I'm gonna put you in for your for a coffee with me and Bev next Tuesday. Yeah. Next
Tuesday, it's in my diary. Yeah.
Perfect, mate.
Marvelous.
And what I'll do as well, I'll put you in touch with my brother if you want.
Yes, please do.
He said he's happy to talk to people, and he knows a lot of these medical people, and they are worried about. You know, I was asking about the venue thing when I saw that story, and he said they would not really encourage people to go into spaces like that towards the vaccine, but maybe he doesn't know all the stuff that you're saying, because he probably has an idea that everybody just rush in there, get really drunk and jump on top of each other.
Yeah.
Which would be fantastic if we could, but we can't. So
no, we can't.
As you say, somewhere in the middle. So if we can find out the medical middle and the rock and roll middle. Yeah.
Do you know what? There's a step even before everything else we discussed. There is a step before that. We could open it up enough that bands could get into venues and perform.
Yeah, we were trying to do that before this thing started. The Band on the Wall, we were going to put gigs on in there before the proper lockdown came. Where the band, here's another weird factor: the band would have to be socially distanced on stage, wouldn't they? 6 foot apart. It's all right for the Rolling Stones, isn't it? But
yeah, but I mean, you know, I think those things are manageable. But I mean, the point is to get actual live music, live performances by bands.
No, anything would be good now.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
walk in a room on your own and sit there and be in a venue would be great with no music in it. It could be somewhere different. Yeah.
Okay, mate.
Well, thanks for your time, Mark. And Bev, I'll see you on Tuesday. Yeah.
See you next week, John.
Okay, bye.
Right.